What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound, brought to you each and every Monday and Thursday by the Hockey News. I am your host, Emma Lingan. I cover the Nashville Predators here at the Hockey News. I'm joined, of course, on this Thursday by my wonderful co-host, Michael Augello, who covers the Buffalo Sabres here for us at the Hockey News. But as usual, we are here talking about bite-sized storylines from around the NHL. So before we do dig into that, want to let you know that we are brought to you by our good friends at Sticks.com. Hey, hockey players, why drop a fortune on your sticks when you can snag pro-level composite sticks at Sticks.com? That's Stix.com. These all black beauties are made for sniping, saucing, and shutting it down, all while looking sharp on the ice. And the best part is that prices start at just $85.13 US for a 3-pack. Yep, you heard that right. Elite sticks without the elite price. Hit up Stix.com. Again, that's Stix.com now and gear up without the markup. Let's go, Michael. Diving right into it. Gabriel Landeskog. Remember him? He has been loaned to the Colorado Eagles in the AHL on a conditioning stint. This seems like the most significant development we've heard on him in quite some time. So, do you think that he could actually be joining the Avalanche for a run in the playoffs? And if he does, how much of an impact is he going to bring?
Well, Jared Bednar, the Avalanche coach today, basically said when Gabriel says that he's ready, he'll be playing. He'll be in the lineup. So it's really up to him and how he feels. I mean, this is very encouraging that he's going down to the American Hockey League. He needs to get in game action. I mean, he hasn't played since the Cup victory in 2022. So the expectations have to be kept in check. I mean, he's a great player. His inspirational value, just getting in the lineup, just persevering through everything that he's gone through with his injury, has to be a boost to the Avs and their chances. But I think, things have to be kept in check in terms of he's not going to jump in and score 5 goals in a 7-game series. If they get him in the lineup and he's playing fourth line, even third line minutes, they have to be, I think, consider themselves lucky, and it's a player that they probably didn't expect to get back. And the other thing is they probably are not going to be able to. I don't think they have the room under the salary cap to activate him before the end of the regular season because he's on long-term injury. So he would be stepping right into the crucible of a playoff series against a very difficult, likely the Dallas Stars. So that also has to be considered. But again, it's a great story, and I'll be glad to see him back because he's a great player.
I think we all will. And Colorado definitely just hurtling towards the playoffs right now. Another playoff team that we need to talk about, though, in the East is the Ottawa Senators. Big story. They clinched their first playoff spot since the 2016-2017 season on Tuesday. We've talked about this team a lot. It's kind of been early in the season. It was a little bit of a will they, won't they situation in terms of did we believe that these guys were the real deal? Now it looks like they are. What in your mind has been the biggest difference this year in order to finally get them over that hump into the postseason? Obviously, Linus Ullmark, we've talked about quite a bit as being, a big factor there, but overall, what else do you think has been kind of the X factor for them?
Well, bringing in Travis Green as the head coach, and I mean, from the very beginning, I think he stressed playing more responsible. I mean, they have high-end offensive talent with Stützle and Batherson and Brady Tkachuk, Thomas Chabot on the back end, along with Jake Sanderson, but they gave up 281 goals against last season, and that was primarily the reason why they didn't make the playoffs. And we talked about their long history going back to Matt Murray and Eunice Korpisalo of them just getting subpar goaltending, Anton Forsberg as well. The Ullmark addition definitely helped them, but I think playing smart defensively and more conservatively in front of him is the reason why they're now in the postseason and have to be considered, a threat to some of the teams that either they play in the 3 slot in the Atlantic Division, or they're the number 1 wild card and play the Atlantic Division winner. They're a scary team because they're playing with house money and nobody expects them to win, but they could very well win because they have a lot of talent.
They do. They've definitely kind of been sort of on the edge, on the bubble there, and now it seems like they are finally taking that leap, getting over the hump in what's been a very competitive Atlantic Division. So will be interesting to see what happens with them. One team that is not obviously in the playoff picture this year, but still has some exciting young talent to keep an eye on is the Anaheim Ducks. So specifically Jackson LaCombe, he's having himself quite a season. He's 24 years old. He's a defenseman. He's got 14 goals and 43 points this year. It's his second full season with the Ducks. He's gone from being a -24 last year to a -1 this year. And he's averaging the most ice time of anyone on the team. And that's including guys like Jacob Trouba and even Cam Fowler when he was still on the Ducks. So it hasn't been quite the story as, say, Lane Hutson in Montreal, who we've talked about as sort of a breakout young defenseman. But should Lacombe be getting a little bit more love, do you think? Should he be more on people's radar, as one of the top young defenders in this league right now?
Well, he definitely has taken a large jump from his rookie season. He had 17 points in his rookie year and now has jumped to 43 in his third on the Ducks scoring, only behind Troy Terry and Mason McTavish. I think the most encouraging thing is the leap in plus minus. The fact that he's leading the team in minutes, I mean, is definitely and the corresponding improvement in plus minus. I mean, those are two things that really normally that doesn't happen, but for a team that's outside of the playoffs, but he's really shown an ability. Now, he's been off the radar really since he was drafted. I mean, he was a 2nd-round pick. University of Minnesota. He was on that team in 2023 that included Brock Faber, Logan Cooley, Matthew Knies, Jimmy Snuggerud. So this is a loaded team, and he stayed there for 4 years. And so, he was a sort of second level among those players who were most of them drafted in the 1st round. But he has really taken a big step. And really, in that organization, you thought more of Mintyukov or Zellweger, and he's the one that's taken the step. I think he benefited from staying in college for 4 years. And now the Ducks, I mean, he's got another year left on his entry-level contract. They can sign him to an extension on July 1st. That's something that Pat Verbeek should definitely think about, because if he puts up another year like this, then you're probably costing yourself money. And they've got room under the cap, but it's always better to get a player signed a year too soon than a year too late.
Absolutely. The Ducks will be an interesting team to keep an eye on in terms of their salary cap situation. And we've talked about them before, heading into the offseason, looking at them as a team that really could be primed to take the next step this year or next year in their kind of rebuilding process. And Lacombe is one of those types of players who could be a big part of that, especially if they can get him locked down long-term earlier, like you said, sooner rather than later. Speaking of former college players or current college players, Elliot Friedman this week in his 32 Thoughts mentioned that Isaac Howard, the Hobey Baker finalist and Tampa Bay Lightning prospect this year, is planning to return back to Michigan State next season. He's 21 years old, got 26 goals, 52 points in 37 games this year. Next year will be his 4th season of college hockey. So he'll become a free agent if he's still unsigned by August 15th of 2026. So obviously we saw sort of a wave of NCAA players signing with NHL teams in the last week or so, couple of weeks. He obviously not one of them and has chosen to go back. So what do you think? Are you surprised by this? And what could this mean considering he's one of Tampa's top prospects?
he's probably their only prospect after they traded all their draft picks. And
True.
I mean, it's a little surprising, but I mean, Tampa Bay really, with the moves that they made at the deadline, they don't have a lot of cap space, and that might be what the problem here is. Howard may have wanted to sign. He may have wanted to burn the first year of his ELC. He may have wanted Schedule A and Schedule B signing bonuses, and the Lightning may not have been able to fit that under the cap with adding Yanni Gourde and adding Bjorkstrand. They may have wanted him to, like Jacob Fowler, go down to Syracuse in the American Hockey League and have the contract start next season. I mean, we don't know for sure. We don't know what the internal machinations between Howard's representative, not agent because he's still in college, but his advisor and Julian Brisebois was. But it could very well be that, and it might be playing out sort of like Cutter Gauthier did with the Flyers, where they didn't want to sign him for whatever reason. They wanted to carry over, or they wanted the full 3 years and wanted him to go to the American Hockey League, or Rutger McGroarty, who couldn't sign with Winnipeg. Both of those guys got traded. So it's very possible that Howard will be traded, but before the beginning of next season, because, more than likely, they're not going to let him get to August 15th. They don't want an asset to just go free agent like Jimmy Vesey did, and they get nothing out of it. Yeah, I know Nashville ended up getting, I think, a third-round pick from the Sabres, and they couldn't sign him, but that's the last thing that Brisebois is going to allow.
Yeah, definitely an interesting situation here. Like you said, an asset, whether it's to the team or as a trade ship. But definitely could imagine why a lot of teams would be interested in a player like Isaac Howard. So could be something to keep an eye on there heading into the offseason and into next year. All right, let's go over to Montreal. Ivan Demidov officially has left the KHL. He is signed with the Canadiens. Is there a chance that he suits up for the Habs and helps them in their playoff pursuit, and then potentially even in the postseason this year?
It sounds like that's the plan. Pierre LeBrun reported on Thursday that they're sort of targeting potentially the game on Monday against Chicago as his debut. Now that assumes that, work permits, Canadian customs, all that is all in line. There's even talk of him maybe practicing with the Canadiens as soon as Saturday when they're doing their morning skate in Toronto. I'll be up there for the Leafs Canadiens game, so I'm hoping that happens because I'd like to see him on the ice. I mean, from every report, he is a dynamic talent. He wouldn't have been drafted at the top 5 in the first round if he wasn't. It's a little surprising that he has been able to sort of shake loose from Scott St. Petersburg and now is in the fold in Montreal. And it sounds like he's only going to be here if he's with the Canadiens and helps the Canadiens. Whether he can step into the lineup right away. He was playing in the KHL playoffs, but whether he can step right into the lineup and have an impact, that's a lot to ask from a 19-year-old, but he is extremely talented. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. Well, you mentioned the Canadiens are going to be in Toronto. Let's talk about Toronto because Matthew Knies recorded a hat trick, including the overtime game winner for the Maple Leafs against the Tampa Bay Lightning on Wednesday. Obviously the Leafs have a lot of playoff demons. That is common knowledge at this point. But considering that a player like Knies has been so effective and so impactful for this team this year, and he really doesn't have the same kind of baggage that the rest of the team does since he has only been with them for 2 seasons. Do you think that he could really be kind of an X factor for them in the postseason? Because we talk about the Leafs and how they can never really get over the hump in the postseason. It's always guys like Mitch Marner or Austin Matthews or the goaltending or whatever it is. But do you think that Knies could really be a guy who makes a significant impact for them in the postseason?
the changes that the Maple Leafs have made over the last year, adding, reinforcing their defense, bringing in Chris Tanev and Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and then Brandon Carlo at the deadline, that has solidified their blue line. The goaltending is always going to be a question. With Knies, he might be a difference maker simply because he's a different type of forward than the forwards that they have right now. Nylander and Marner are essentially skill players. Matthews is a big body, but he's not overly physical, and he doesn't like to get pushed around, and he'll push back, but he's not going to initiate physicality. And John Tavares is just a really savvy veteran player. Matthew Knies initiates physicality. He gets in there. He confronted a player against Florida, got bloodied up a little bit. He's not going to shy away from that type of game, but that big-bodied presence also was sort of married with high-end skill. He's really improved himself skill-wise. I mean, he got a lot stronger. I think he put like 20 pounds of muscle on in the offseason, and that's been very apparent in his game. But the play that he pulled off in overtime, where the between the legs pass to Morgan Riley before he scored the game winner, I mean, you don't see players pull that move off all the time. So he could be a difference maker, but the big difference for Toronto is going to be who they match up in the first round of the playoffs. If they match up against Tampa, they may have an advantage because Knies has scored 9 goals in 9 games against Tampa during his short career. If they come up against Florida, who they lost 3 or 4 games to, or Ottawa, who they lost all 4 games to, then that's going to be a challenge. So the Leafs' path to postseason glory is strewn with potholes.
Yes, very eloquently said. And Matthew Knies, of course, you talked about his size, his physicality. Those are things that can go quite a long way in a playoff run. So will be interesting to see how he impacts the Leafs in that way. Unfortunately for the Vancouver Canucks, they will not be heading to the postseason this year, officially eliminated this week. And Quinn Hughes got really transparent in a recent interview that he had with Ian McIntyre from Sportsnet, talking about the pressure that he feels to bring a Stanley Cup to Vancouver. So, quote from the interview, he said, "This team named me captain, and I feel obligated to be a successful team here. Obviously, one guy can't do that, but I definitely feel obligated, and that weighs heavy on my mind that they entrusted me with that. This year has been hard, and I want to find a way to put us in a situation where we can be really successful and ultimately win a Stanley Cup." So obviously, part of that is that's just being a good captain. He's putting a lot of responsibility on himself for the team's shortcomings. But of course, we know that it's not entirely on Quinn Hughes. If anything, he's the reason that they were in the playoff race as long as they were. So I think that you got to look at it that way. But at the same time, he's just got 2 years left on his contract. He's feeling pressure, but how much pressure should Patrick Allvin be feeling to actually build a winning team around him? Because once that contract is up, they're going to have to, really sell him on wanting to stay in Vancouver.
A ton of pressure on Patrick Allvin. I mean, the line that stuck out on that quote was the one guy aspect, because there's no doubting what Quinn Hughes is. He's a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman, but he can't do it on his own. And we've seen the Canucks sort of been, in chaos for most of the year with the whole JT Miller, Elias Pettersson situation. They trade Miller, and Pettersson really hasn't improved since. So are they going to trade Pettersson now? He doesn't have a no move clause until July 1st. Is that in the offing? And then Allvin really has to factor in, well, if I trade Pettersson and I get futures back, is this team going to be good enough to compete for a Stanley Cup within 2 years before Quinn Hughes' contract expires? And I don't know whether they will be. And we all know, and we all suspect what will happen after those 2 years. Maybe not even in those 2 years. If they try to start negotiations on an extension on July 1st, 2026, and he says, no, I think I'll play out the contract. Then his destination is Newark, is the New Jersey Devils, where his two brothers play. So this is going to play out very quickly for Vancouver, and they're going to have to make moves based on being competitive when that contract comes up. Otherwise, I think he's gonzo.
Yeah, definitely a ton of pressure. Almost a message to Patrick Allvin. Hey, one guy can't do it all by himself. So got to build a team around him. Okay, a little bit of a more fun, lighter topic for you now, Michael. The Masters start this week. As of today, a little fun game here. Connor Bedard would win the NHL's green jacket, just based on plus minus. If you just take this journey with me for a second, obviously in hockey, you want a higher plus minus than that. Golf, the opposite. The lower the better. So Connor Bedard would win the Masters right now if it were in hockey. He is, I guess, leading slash at the bottom of the league with a minus 40 right now. But let's just look as a little exercise here at the top 5 worst plus minus ratings in the NHL so far this season. We've got Bedard, number 1, minus 40. Tyler Bertuzzi, minus 39. Mason Lohrei, minus 39. Barclay Goodrow, minus 33. And Rasmus Anderson at minus 33. So those are the 5 worst. They would be the 5 best if hockey were golf. So looking at those just on that list, is there anyone on that list who surprises you, or maybe someone who you expected to be on that list who isn't?
Well, 3 don't surprise me because Chicago and San Jose are clearly rebuilding clubs. So Bedard at minus 40, Bertuzzi, who has been his line mate for a good chunk of the season. That doesn't surprise me. Barclay Goodrow with San Jose, another rebuilding club. Even though he's more of a defensive forward, he probably gets matchups against the other team's top line. That's not surprising. The 2 that really made me sort of shake my head was Lohrei and Anderson for 2 different reasons. Lohrei was minus 2 last year and is minus 39 this year. He's playing a lot higher in the lineup than I think the Bruins would have liked. Obviously, Charlie McAvoy has been out since the Four Nations. Hampus Lindholm has been out for most of the season, so he's probably playing top 4 minutes. Last year, he was more of a specialist. He's more of an offensive defenseman. So if he's being played in matchup situations, that is what's contributing to his hefty minus. And on top of that, Boston has traditionally been one of the best defensive clubs in the league. And obviously they're not that way this year. Anderson, he's a highly respected defenseman. The thing that surprised me is if you compare him with the other defenseman who plays a significant amount of minutes on the Calgary Flames, and that's Mackenzie Weegar, he's plus 15 and Anderson is minus 34. That's a difference of 49. That's stark. That's really bad. So I don't know if he's getting the top line matchups, but the space between the 2 is really surprising.
Yeah, not surprising, like you said, to see guys from the bottom 2 teams in the league on there. I'll be honest, as someone who covers the Nashville Predators, a little bit surprised that no one from that team was on this list. But I'm sure they are not too far behind. Speaking of the Nashville Predators, we're going to wrap up here today talking about the Masterton Trophy. All 32 nominees were announced this week. I know, Michael, you and I, both members of the Professional Hockey Writers Association, so we got to take part in picking these nominees for the teams that we cover. So for Nashville, Nick Blankenberg; for Buffalo, a former Nashville Predator, Jason Zucker. So just want to see if you could talk a little bit about what this trophy means, what it doesn't mean, because a lot of people think that it is the biggest comeback from the most tragic injury award, and it is not. But I think that, maybe talk a little bit about Jason Zucker, what went into the decision there, and why you think he's deserving of the nomination.
I think the key word with Zucker is perseverance. I mean, he's had a long career. He's been with 4 teams. Last year, he was with Arizona and then got traded to Nashville at the trade deadline. He's been a really good veteran player for a long stretch, but he seemed to be at a crossroads in his career, signs a 1-year deal with Buffalo, and really has taken on a leadership role that I don't think that he really had with other teams. If you look at, and he even talked about it with us in the locker room, where, he played with guys like Danny Heatley and Zach Parise and Ryan Suter in Minnesota. And basically the way they led by example was what he tried to show a team with a lot of young players. And he's had an impact, even though the Sabres have missed the playoffs for the 14th straight season. He has had an impact on the team to the positive, and almost I think the exclusive reason why they wanted to bring him back and he resigned a 2-year deal is because of the impact that he's had with the Sabres. So, he's had his best year point wise since 2018. So he's definitely, I think, reestablished his career on a positive track. Now in Nashville, it was Nick Blankenburg. What were the reasons for Blankenburg being the selection?
Well, like you mentioned, perseverance being one of the key factors here. The Masterton Trophy goes each year to the player who best exemplifies perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. And, we talked about it, and I think Nick Blankenburg was just the most obvious choice for this award. I think he is a guy who didn't even start the season on the NHL roster. He was in Milwaukee in the AHL. He got called up when there were some injuries, and then didn't expect him to stick, and he stuck due to injuries, trades, etc. And through it all, through what has been an incredibly disappointing season for the Nashville Predators, I think Nick Blankenburg has been one of the very few bright spots and one of the few surprises of the pleasant variety for this Nashville team. He has been kind of thrust into playing a much larger role as a top pairing defenseman with Brady Shea for much of the season here, because Roman Yossi's injured, Jeremy Lauzon is injured, Dante Fabro, Alex Carrier both got either waived or traded. So Luke Shen got traded. So there's, been a lot of movement, a lot of turnover on the back end there. And he's really just been one of the most constant players. He's also, we were talking about plus minus earlier, also currently the only player on Nashville's roster with a positive plus minus. So that's got to count for something. So I think that, yeah, he's just, is he going to be winning any Norris trophies? No, but he has been one of the most consistent and one of the most pleasant surprises for Nashville in a season where there have not been many pleasant surprises. Probably similar to Buffalo. We can we can commiserate about that. But for now, that is going to do it for today's episode of the Wraparound. Thank you again, Michael, as always, for joining me today. Thank you, of course, to Stix.com for sponsoring us each and every week. We will be back with an all new episode on Monday. We'll see you then.